Okay, welcome to our New York Giants Preservation Society meeting for tonight, November 6th, 2025, with Tom Van Hyning. Tom is going to be talking about Ozzie Virgil Sr. Before we turn it over to Tom, just to give you some housekeeping, there'll be no meeting next week. The following week, on November 19th, we will have Russ Stanley. Russ is vice president in charge of season tickets and other things with the Giants. He's a great guy, and he was very much a friend of Orlando Cepeda and Willie McCovey. So Russ is going to talk about those two great Giants. If you're interested in attending our soiree Infinities on December 20th, everything went out. We have 33 people coming so far. We're hoping to get 60. If you haven't answered, please answer, because I have opened it up to some of the Sabre chapters I am a part of. One is the Casey Stengel group. The other is the Elysian Fields group in New Jersey. So please, if you're interested, get in touch with me. Let me just let these two people in. I also want to welcome aboard. We have two Giant legacies tonight here. Linda Thomas, Ozzie Virgil's daughter, and Ozzie Virgil's son, Ozzie Virgil Jr., who is, of course, a terrific catcher in the major leagues, especially he played with Toronto, but best known for his times with the Braves and the Phillies. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Tom. Tom, you want me to get the screen ready for you?
Yeah, please
Okay.
do.
Let me do that. Let's see. Okay.
And then this will be a two-part presentation.
Right. Now let me
Part one
get,
will, yes.
yep. Hold on. Get this out of here. Hold on. And here we should go.
Nice family.
Let's see if this works. Uh-oh. This is not looking good right now. Hold on. Nope. Cancel. Gotta shrink this. This is just here. Hold, give me a second. No, this is not it. It's not allowing me to work. You want to delete the shortcut? Yes. All right, hold on. Give me 1 second. I don't know where this stuff went. My apologies. This was a while back. Tom, are you able to send me that stuff again?
Oh, yeah, I can email, right? I can text. Yeah.
Can you do that right now, please? I'm so sorry. I don't
Okay.
know why it's not working.
Okay.
Just send it to my email and I'll get it up here.
Yeah. Oh, both at one time, right?
Yep, that'd be fine. Audience, I apologize. I don't know why it's not working. It worked all this time when I opened it before.
Gary, we like looking at your family.
Oh, thank you so much. Linda, do you want to talk a little bit about your dad until we get this thing started? Linda, are you still here?
There we go. How's that?
That's great. You guys want to
Better?
chat a little bit about your dad
Awesome.
while I try to get this the PowerPoint going?
Well, she's putting it all on me, I see. Yeah.
He's
Well,
my older brother.
As growing up, as you guys know, Dad took me around to all the ballparks. I got to meet a lot of players from the 60s and got to play catch with them. My dad managed in Puerto Rico
And Venezuela.
and Venezuela and Dominican Republic, but mainly in Puerto Rico, we had a lot of history there. I'll just tell a story. When I was my dad was managing, and he ran out of pitchers one time, and they were playing Roberto Clemente's team. And my dad went up on the mound, and they had a good rapport. So they were talking crap back and forth. He got up on the mound, and Roberto said, "I'm gonna take you deep," and he's laughing. Sure enough, man, he threw too many strikes to this guy, and he hit it out of the ballpark, and he was laughing all the way around the bases. And I was upset. I was rooting for my dad to get the guy out. It didn't happen, but that was a memory. A lot of the Detroit Tigers sent all their players. Stanley, Willie Horton, all those guys was on this team during that time. I think Mickey Lolich was there. There's a bunch of them. They were all from the Detroit Tigers because they fed them in there before they got to the big leagues. None of these guys were in the big leagues at the time, so that was pretty neat to be around that. Talking about Willie McCubby used to call me because me and Tito Fuentes, son, the Bonds,
Yeah.
they used to be in a clubhouse in San Francisco.
Candlestick.
Yeah, in Candlestick, and we used to wrap a sanitary sock and put tape all the way around it and play baseball in the clubhouse.
Right.
We got thrown out. No, we were hitting people's, hitting the ball, going into other people's locker rooms and stuff. And it was, they didn't have, they weren't too fond of it, but plus we all used to sit around when they put seventh inning, they used to put the spread out. We used to go in there and hit it. And we eat everything. Ice cream, it doesn't matter what it was. We were eating everything. And then this guy named Logan used to come around and he used to just yell at us. He was a clubhouse manager.
Eddie Logan Sr., yes.
Yeah. He used to go, "Hey, that's for the players." So we're playing.
That's great. We're gonna get back to you, Tom. I'm gonna try to do. Could everybody see the screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
very good.
Terrific, Tom. I apologize. I don't know what happened, but we have this now, and then we'll get to the second screen. So the floor
Okay.
is yours. And again, my apologies.
Oh, no problem. I'm actually, I feel better. I feel pretty calm, and I want to thank Ozzie's two children for taking the time. That this means a lot to me. By the way, my father was born on May 17th of 1914, exactly
Wow.
18 years before Ozzie Sr. was born. So I've always remembered Ozzie's birthday pretty much for many years. Next slide, please. Can you go ahead and?
Yep.
Good. Yeah. This is a very interesting note.
Mhm.
There was a pitcher actually from Montecristi in the Dominican Republic named Pedro Alejandro San, who technically, because of what Commissioner Manfred did about nearly 5 years ago in giving major league status to 7 Negro leagues from 1920 to 1948, technically Pedro San is the first Dominican big leaguer because of, he pitched for the Cuban Stars East, but Ozzie Sr. is still the first Dominican player to play in the National League with the 56 Giants and the 58 Detroit Tigers. Next one, please. I mentioned Manfred. I'd like to show you a picture of Satchel Paige. That's the next slide. In 1937, I believe 1937 was the year that Ozzie Sr., his family moved to New York City when he was a child. And by the way, when I interviewed Ozzie Sr., his English is perfect. So he was not only a great, Latino pioneer, but he was also a U.S. Marine, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But in 1937, when Ozzie Sr. had just turned 5 years old, the dictator, Mr. Trujillo, basically sent $30,000 to $35,000 with an emissary to New Orleans to pretty much sign Satchel Paige, Cool Papa Bell, and Josh Gibson. So probably the most famous baseball tournament in the Dominican Republic during Ozzie's early childhood was the Dragons of Ciudad Trujillo. They had these great Negro leaguers who played the Águilas Ibaeñas and the Estrellas Orientales, which is another, and it had some of the best Negro leaguers at that time. Next slide, please. In 1947 was the year that the Brooklyn Dodgers did their spring training in Havana, Cuba. It was also the year that the New York Yankees, for the very first time, did their spring training in San Juan, Puerto Rico, at the Sixto Escobar, El Parque Cambron, which was renamed Sixto Escobar Stadium. And for whatever reason, in 1947, Ozzie Virgil Sr. saw his first major league game. Next slide, please. If you can get a close-up of Al Gianfrido. There you go, right there. Hold it for a second. This is Yankee Stadium, Game 6 of the 1947 Fall Classic. Joe DiMaggio was batting in the bottom of the sixth inning. George Sternweiss and Yogi Berra were on base. The Dodgers were ahead 8-5, and DiMaggio would have easily had a double or a triple had Gianfrido not made that catch. I don't know if you've seen a highlight of that play, but it's one of the few times that Joe DiMaggio ever showed emotion on the field. He kind of, hit the dust going into second base, and he was basically deprived of a 2-run extra base hit. Next slide, please. Ozzie Sr.'s nickname was El Oregano. It's a spice, and
Very famous spice.
Yes. And of course,
Dominican
I guess you
spice.
could go to Mexico. I mean, oregano is known all over the world, but right. But he graduated. I don't know how many of you folks from New York are familiar with DeWitt Clinton High School, but at the time that Ozzie went to high school there, he did not play high school sports. However, from my interview with him, he wasn't very good. He kept himself in very good physical condition and was able, for a couple of years, he was a distinguished U.S. Marine. I believe he spent a lot of the time at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and I think he did some logistics work during the Korean War and played a little bit of baseball during that time. But obviously, you got to give him credit because he never played, as far as I know, he never played Little League Baseball, pony, none of that stuff. He never played. Next slide, please.
Street ball.
As the son pointed out a little while ago, Mayagüez was really kind of a hometown to him, and the Mayagüez Indios franchise in the Puerto Rico Winter League dates back to 1938. Jorge Colon Delgado, who is attending this Zoom meeting, wrote a very nice book about 6 years ago documenting the history of the Mayagüez franchise. Next slide, please. The Mayagüez franchise basically was made responsible because of the sponsorship of the India beer, which also became a malt beverage. My father, Sam, really, when we first moved to Puerto Rico, my father drank a lot of India beer, I'll tell you that. And my dad actually met Alfonso Valdez on a trip to Mayagüez to promote economic development for that community. And Mr. Valdez was a very good owner who cared a lot about his city. Mayagüez is in the western part of Puerto Rico. Next slide, please. Here's the old stadium, the Isidoro Garcia Stadium, where Ozzie Virgil
Like that.
Oh my God.
became a rookie in 1952. Next slide, please. Mayagüez, if you've ever been there, I've been there a few times. Mayagüez has a beautiful city hall. It was officially incorporated on September 18, 1760, but before the Revolutionary War. Puerto Rico, for example, was discovered back in 1493, I believe, by Columbus, and it's San Juan, by the way, is the oldest city under the U.S. flag today. Next slide, please. Ozzie Jr. gave us a very great story about Roberto Clemente. Coincidentally, Clemente was only 18 years old in 1952 when Ozzie Sr. was a rookie or a novato with the 52-53 Mayagüez Indios. Roberto had 77 at-bats. Ozzie Sr. had 82 at-bats, and they both played against each other in their youth. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the 53 Mayagüez Indios. They had three North American managers that year. Tommy Lasorda was one of Ozzie's first American, teammates. The American players were called the imports or the importados. And Ozzie, every time Ozzie played in Puerto Rico, he played as a native player. He was not an import. and Lasorda is on the top, and Ozzie is right. If you see top row to bottom, Ozzie Senior is right below Tommy Lasorda. Next
Right
slide,
here.
please.
This
Yes,
is,
if you
and
can, I
here's
don't know if you can
Lasorda's
circle
over
it,
here.
right. Ozzie. Here's I mentioned Lasorda, left-hand pitcher. Tommy Lasorda, that winter in Puerto Rico, became very well known. He pitched like 17 or 18 innings in the same day. He pitched basically both games of a doubleheader. One was a suspended game, and he became kind of a folk hero in Puerto Rico because of his willingness to pitch a lot that winter. And thanks to Ozzie and some of his teammates in Puerto Rico, that was the winter that Tommy Lasorda first started speaking Spanish, and he later became fairly fluent in Spanish. Next slide, please. Those of you rabid New York Giant fans will remember the great Ruben Gomez, the number 22 from Puerto Rico. But then on his left is Don Little, who I interviewed several times. Don Little was from Mount Carmel, Illinois. If you've ever been to Illinois, Mount Carmel is in the southern part of the state. And Little was about 5'9", 160 pounds. But during one game in Puerto Rico, the San Juan fans that Little pitched for bet a lot of money that he would beat Ruben Gomez that night. And strangely enough, Ruben was like 33-14 in his pitching against San Juan for many years. But that night, Little outpitched Ruben. And basically, after the game, Don Little told me that he felt somebody put something in his back pocket. Well, it was 3 $100 bills, because some of the bettors in San Juan bet a bunch of money, and they were rewarding Don Little for winning that night. Well, right after Little got the money in his back pocket, he told me a police officer at the stadium in San Juan had a billy club and started hitting one of the fans because the police officer thought that the fan was going to attack Don Little. But Don said, no, leave the guy alone. He's not attacking me. The next guy is Ray Crone. Ray Crone pitched for the Caguas team, a team that had Hank Aaron, Jim Rivera, and some other good players like Victor Peyote, Vic Power. Ray Crone briefly pitched for the New York San Francisco Giants, but first pitched for the Milwaukee Braves. Next slide, please. This is the famous stadium. It's actually named after a boxer. Puerto Rico has produced many boxing champions like Jose Chiegui Torres, Carlos Ortiz, and more recent fighters. But this guy, Sito Escobar, fought at 118 pounds, and he was from a town called Barceloneta, Puerto Rico, which is where Jose Pagan is from. But Escobar Stadium was shared by San Juan and Santurce. Next slide, please. I mentioned Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron was 19 years old on your left, depending on where you're watching. Hank Aaron played second base for Caguas until he had an early season hitting slump, and his manager, Mickey Owen, told me in a phone interview that Mickey Owen suggested that Aaron play right field, and the rest is history. Aaron was about 4 at-bats from being returned to the United States. In Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico Winter League was not a league to develop players. It was a league to win. And if Aaron had not started hitting, they would have sent him home and replaced him with another North American player. Next to Hank Aaron is the great Willie Mays, who played for Santurce 54-55 along with Clemente. Clemente played left field on that great team, and Bob Thurman played right field. It was one of maybe the greatest Winter League team of that era, and one of the best Winter League teams ever. If you could go down, okay, stop right there, please. Roberto Clemente had a pretty good season, hit 344, but Willie Mays won the batting title at 395. Elson Howard hit 369. And Herman Franks, who later managed the San Francisco Giants, managed Santurce. Interestingly, Don Zimmer, who played shortstop for Santurce, was the MVP of the 1955 Caribbean Series, which was hosted by Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela. And the Magallanes Navigators came in second, and Santurce won that championship. By the way, in 53, 54, and 55, Puerto Rico won 3 straight Caribbean Series. So basically, Puerto Rico had a very strong Winter League at the time that Ozzie Sr. began playing professional baseball, and that helped him immensely. In 1955-56, the Dominican Republic was able to start their own Winter League called, it's now known as LIDOM, the acronym stands for Liga Dominicana, the Dominican Winter League. So it's been in existence for 70 years now. Ozzie Sr. at age 23 joined the Escogido Lions, which is the same team that David Big Papi Ortiz later played for. It's the same team that Albert Pujols managed to the Caribbean Series championship last year. It's the same team that Willie McCovey, Juan Marichal, and the Alou brothers played for many years. Next slide, please. Those of you from, I don't know how many of you are from Staten Island and how many of you are familiar with the Genovese brothers, but Ozzie Virgil's first manager in the Dominican Republic was a fellow named Chick Genovese, who was a longtime scout for the Giants and who eventually became fairly fluent in Spanish. And he was actually quite popular in the Dominican Republic. Next slide, please. The Escogido Lions, those of you might be familiar that winter ball, typically they play anywhere from maybe 40, 50, 60 games, as many as 70 or 80 back many years ago. But in Ozzie's rookie Dominican season, he only had 36 at-bats, had 10 hits. But guess what? During the finals, the very first championship series ever played in that beautiful island, Ozzie went 11 for 22 against the yellow team, the Águilas Ibaeñas. And by the way, the Águilas Ibaeñas, if you recall, was a farm team of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Believe it or not, Bill Mazeroski, who hit that famous home run in the 1960 World Series, played 2 winter seasons at age 19 and 20 for that team. And also, believe it or not, Earl Weaver was his double play partner back in '55. Anyway, so I talked about his birthday on September 23rd, 1956. He made his major league debut for the New York Giants. He actually finished that season. He batted over 400. After September 30th doubleheader, he had a tremendous doubleheader, and he ended up with 5 hits and 12 at bats. By the way, several of you mentioned the New York Giants football team. I want to hold this slide for a minute. Some of you may or may not know this, but Tom Landry was the defensive coordinator of a great 1956 New York Giants team, and Vince Lombardi was the offensive genius. And back then, I believe the NFL teams only had a couple of assistant coaches, and the Giants had a quarterback from Mississippi named Chunking Charlie Connerly, and they beat the Chicago Bears 47-7 in the 1956 championship game. I thought I'd mention that because I know some of you are big New York Giants football fans. Okay, right there, let's stop it for a second. In 1956-57, Ozzie Sr. became the MVP at age 24 of the Liga Dominicana. He had a tremendous, he had a .312 batting average, and ironically, he was a teammate of Sparky Anderson. Sparky Anderson, many people do not know this, but Sparky Anderson played 1 year of Major League Baseball with the '59 Philadelphia Phillies. But Sparky told me in our interview that he enjoyed very much having Ozzie as a teammate. And not only that, but Ozzie Virgil gave some advice to Sparky, whose Spanish wasn't so good. So people like Sparky and Steve Bilko really appreciate Ozzie, who was totally bilingual. Felipe Alou also had a pretty good year, as well as Willie Kirkland, who was a good outfielder. One of my baseball buddies was Pete Burnside, who was a tremendous pitcher. Well, he was a good left-handed pitcher in winter ball, not so good in the major leagues. Stan Williams had some success, and Jim Brosnan became a pretty good author. Some of these pitchers, including Brosnan, told me the Ponce Lions in Puerto Rico had financial issues. So after they were let go by Ponce, they joined Bilko and Brosnan joined the Escogido team. In the postseason, hold that slide for a second. In the postseason, Escogido went 8-2. They won the semis, 3 games to none. And Ozzie again hit very well, 6 for 12 in the semis versus the Águilas Ibaeñas. Burnside and Brosnan won a game. And then in the finals, I don't know if any of you are New York Yankee fans, but there was a left-handed pitcher named Eddie Lopat who won 5 World Series rings with the old Yankees that Ozzie Sr. knew about. And Eddie Lopat actually managed the Licey team, the arch rival team. But the Escogido team won it. And Ozzie again hit for 308, knocked in 4 runs. Felipe Alou was the MVP of that final series. Escogido used 21 players. Next slide. How many of you ever watched a TV show reruns called Sergeant Bilko?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, Steve Bilko's widow. I lived in northeastern Pennsylvania. I lived in a little town called Factoryville, Pennsylvania. And for those of you who may or may not be familiar, the great Christy Mathewson was from Factory. I lived about 4 blocks from Christy Mathewson's childhood home. But anyway, Sergeant Bilko gave that show the name of Steve Bilko because Phil Silvers was a huge baseball fan in Los Angeles, and he saw Steve Bilko hit a lot of home runs for the Pacific Coast League team in Los Angeles.
And you know the guy, you know the guy next to Bilko, right?
Who would that
next
be?
to Phil Silvers?
Wigmore.
Alan Melville.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, good. In
He
1957,
was Sam the Butcher on the Brady Bunch.
Oh, is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
He
was.
was
That's
in
right.
Gomer Pyle. And
that's right. He
All
was
in the-
everywhere.
All in
He
the
was on the
Family.
Andy Griffith Show a lot as a big bully.
Oh, okay.
Yep. He tried to
Okay.
beat up Barney.
That's
Great.
right.
Well, now going back, the next year after Escogido goes for a trifecta, we talk about some of the great MLB teams like the New York Yankees of the late 40s and early 50s. The Dodgers just won back to back, but Escogido, thanks to Ozzie and other players, won their 3rd straight. They got the trifecta. Felipe had a decent season, but here's the deal: the Giants were about to move to San Francisco, and the Giants had already negotiated a working agreement. In Spanish, the word is convenio. They did a convenio with the Lions to send some of their best prospects like Willie Kirkland, etc. And of course, the young Matty Alou and a young Manny Mora and Manny Alou basically became Escogido rookies that winter. I became friends of Rudy Hernandez, by the way, who some of you may or may not know. He owned a nightclub in Puerto Rico, not too far from where I lived. So there were a couple of times I talked to Rudy, and he was a character. He also went to high school in New York and spoke perfect English. And Rudy was a teammate of Ozzie that winter. Juan Marichal made his rookie pitching for that team, and Steve Ridzik, who I interviewed and pitched for the New York Giants, also pitched for that Escogido team. In the finals, let me say something very important. The reason I put Escogido in red is that the emblem or the symbol for Escogido is red, the red team. The Licey Tigers were the blue team. The Estrellas Orientales are considered the green team. And real quickly, the origin of the colors has to do with the Cuban Winter League, because Estrellas Orientales took their uniforms from the Elephants of Cienfuegos, who in Cuba had the green uniforms. Havana had a reddish color, like Escogido later did, and the Almendares Blues had the blue color. So that's some little history for you of how some of the Dominican teams adopted some of the color schemes that they did. My friend Rudy Hernandez pitched beautifully. He was a great pitcher in winter ball, and not so good in the big leagues, but in winter ball he was very good. Don, by the way, the Estrellas Orientales, the green team, had a working agreement with the Milwaukee Braves because Don McMahon had just come from pitching in the 1957 World Series with Hank Aaron and some of those great Braves that upset the Yankees. McMahon was sent to the Dominican. And later, believe it or not, occasionally you'll have a trade. I told you 5 minutes ago that winter ball is all about winning. You know, it's not about developing kids. That helps, but they want to win. McMahon was traded to the San Juan Senators for, I think, a pitcher named Ray Ripplemeyer. In other words, Ripplemeyer went to San Juan and McMahon went to Estrella. So occasionally you would have trades between winter leagues, but not that often. In 1958, Osvaldo Ozzie Virgil Sr. had a 5-for-5 game, and he told me in our phone interview that it was the first time in the big leagues that he got a standing ovation, and that meant a lot to him because he actually was the first Caribbean player and the first player of color, you know, black player who actually wore the uniform of the Detroit Tigers, obviously a team with a lot of history. And ironically, one of his hits came from a Cuban pitcher that he was familiar with named Pedro Ramos. who had a great career in the Cuban Winter League and later pitched for the New York Yankees in relief. The lineup that day, if you look at the lineup, you had a Hall of Famer named Al Kaline, and Ozzie Sr. batted second that night. Harvey Quinn was a good. And by the way, the great manager Billy Martin played shortstop that evening for the Detroit Tigers, and Kaline homered, and nearly 30,000 saw that game. However, the Giants apparently had traded for Ozzie to the Tigers for Jim Finnegan and $25,000 toward the end of the 57-58 winter season. Here's the little highlight of the champion Escogido team. Between 55 and 61, the only time they missed winning the championship was in 58-59, which we'll cover right now. In 1958-59, in the next slide, please, thank you, Ozzie didn't hit as well as he had in prior years, but he still contributed to a winning team. Felipe had a great hitting season, batting .351. McCovey, the Giants wanted McCovey to continue his development. Joey Amalfitano, who became a coach later on, was one of the imported players. Manny Mota and Matty Alou got a little more playing time. This was the season that Juan Marichal showed the San Francisco Giants that he eventually could be a top of the line starting pitcher. If you look at the four starting pitchers for the Giants, you had Marichal, an American named Dom Zanni, a lefty named Fred Kipp, and George Garabato Saki, who was a Dominican player, but with an English sounding last name, and they were the four starters.
And light in the oven off.
Say that again?
No, somebody's speaking. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Pete Burnside, who I mentioned a minute ago, Pete Burnside actually pitched for the Licey team that year. By the way, Pete Burnside was Don Zimmer's Santurce teammate when they won the Caribbean Series back in '55. Next slide, please. The Escogido Lions were favored to beat Licey in the finals, and had Escogido won that championship series, that would have been 4 straight titles for Escogido. But Licey upset them 5-4. And I don't know if you heard this. I may have mentioned this a year ago when I talked about Ruben Gomez, but Licey actually had a pitcher named Bob Gibson on that team who later pitched for the Cardinals. And Gibson actually was released from Licey because the Licey owner was so mad after Willie McCovey's two-run homer off Gibson in early December '58 that the Licey owner signed Bob Gibson's walking papers and sent him on a one-way flight back to the States the next morning. That's a true story. Next slide. Joe Gibbon became my friend in Mississippi. Joe Gibbon pitched for the 1960 Pittsburgh Pirates as a rookie, but in '58-59 he played for the Águilas team, and he pitched against Ozzie Sr. in '58-59. If you recall, they had a dictator named Rafael Leonidas Trujillo, and that country was so closely guarded from the meatpacking plants to the newspapers that Joe Gibbon told me that every time he sent a letter to Mississippi, the post office in Santiago, the city that they played, the post office would open his outgoing mail, and anytime his mom sent him a letter from Hickory, Mississippi, a real rural area, to the Dominican, it might take 10 days. The post office in Santiago opened the mail just to make sure that it was a legitimate letter. So I mean, it was pretty. The American players were told to pretty much keep their opinions to themselves. Joe told me one night he went to a function, a social function, and one of Trujillo's sons was at the function with guards from the police that had machine guns all around them, and so it was like, hi, how are you? How's the weather? I mean, they didn't really talk about a lot of things. And Joe told me that he started out like 2-5 or 2-6, and he came within 24 hours of being released, but then he won like 3 in a row, and they patted him on back and said, "Oh, you're okay. You'll stay with us." Next slide, please. Escogido came back in '59-60, and they did win the championship again. I believe, if you correct me, but the manager was a former Brooklyn Dodgers outfielder named Pete Reiser. Pete later got hurt running into a wall, I believe, but he was a very good outfielder for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And this Licey team had the guy they called the condominium, 6'8" Frank Howard, who I interviewed several times. Frank Howard, for breakfast, at the hotel that he stayed at in Santo Domingo, Frank told me that he ate 12 eggs for breakfast each morning. Plus, he ate ice cream, a lot of ice cream at night after a big meal. But the good thing about winter ball is that some of the American players, they became friendly with the Dominican players. So Felipe Alou would take Frank fishing on off days. So that camaraderie, unfortunately, doesn't exist in today's world where the salaries are very high and the players lift weights and have personal trainers and all the agents. But back then, they could make extra money and get to know the real people on those islands. In the final series, the Estrellas Orientales again played Escogido, and this time Escogido won 5-1. Ozzie had another good final series. Frank hit a home run. Kurt Roberts was a pretty good second baseman. Matty went 13 for 22, so already, the Alou brothers were already playing good baseball. Ed Roebuck had a decent career. Juan Marichal pitched twice in relief. Hold the slide for a minute. You see, Juan Marichal is the first Dominican who played in the National League as a pitcher for the 60 New York San Francisco Giants. My friend Rudy Hernandez is the first Dominican pitcher to ever pitch in the American League for the 1960 Washington Senators. So actually, Rudy preceded Juan Marichal by just about a week or 10 days. So Rudy told me that meant a lot to him. The final slide here, I don't know how many of you remember the assassination of the dictator, but this took place on May 30th of 1961. And obviously, several people have told me that the CIA, we don't have time to talk about that, but the bottom line is that the country went through a long period of instability after the assassination. And part two is coming up, and we'll take about a 20-second break and go to part two now. If Gary can.
I hope I get this
Okay.
right. Okay, let's see. All right, we're good.
Perfect. Thank you. I know we got off to a little late start, so I'll try to go fast, but if I go too fast, just give me a signal. Ozzie told me on our interview, Ozzie Sr. gave me some very good insights, okay? And I don't mind sharing these with you, even though it happened a long time ago. Ozzie told me that he was very comfortable with Mayagüez, and Ozzie was very much aware of the political instability. As a matter of fact, he told me during our phone conversation that when Escogido won the 1957 championship, during that final series in 57, one of Trujillo's lieutenants came down to the playing field and slapped Andre Rogers on the face after Andre Rogers made an error. And Ozzie found that, beyond, it wasn't even strange. It was just very offensive. And Ozzie didn't like that. But, Ozzie, knowing the political situation, didn't say anything. But Ozzie told me that in the 60s, he decided not to play winter ball in Dominican during the 60s because the country was going through a lot of political turmoil. In 1960-61, the Indios started, I think Ozzie Jr. made a very good point. The Detroit Tigers and Mayagüez eventually signed a very good working agreement, and that began with a pitcher named Phil Reagan, who Sandy Koufax later called the Vulture. Phil Reagan later became a famous relief pitcher, but at that time he was a starting pitcher for the Indios, and they were a pretty good team that year. But that year, Clemente State, the San Juan Senators, won the Puerto Rico championship. And Bob Gibson, who had been released a couple years earlier, pitched in Venezuela for Oriente, but then he was brought to help Valencia win the Inter-American Series, which was a postseason tournament. 61-62. This was a very good season. They played 80 games. Can you imagine in today's world having prospects play an 80-game winter season? Well, even the great Orlando Cepeda, who hit 46 homers for the 61 Giants, played a whole winter season and hit 19 homers. Frank Howard told me that second year with Caguas in Puerto Rico was tremendous for him because he got to bat against Bob Gibson. He got a bat against Luis Tite Arroyo. So winter ball was extremely helpful to these American players and to the local players. You had the Inter-American Series that Santurce won. Here's a picture of a manager named Vern Benson, who later managed in the Dominican and Venezuela. Vern Benson managed Santurce. Vern Benson brought Bob Gibson down to Puerto Rico. And Craig Anderson, if any of you New York Mets fans will remember that Craig Anderson, the taller guy here, was 3-17 for the famous 1962 Mets, and he pitched for Casey Stengel. Casey Stengel managed him for several years with the Mets. I'd like to hold this for a second. From February 6th to February 14th, 1962, this was the last baseball event played at the old Sixto Escobar Stadium. Ozzie, in the 9-game tournament, Ozzie came in second in home runs. He had 3 home runs. Mike De La Hoz hit 4 for Santurce. But the 4 teams in that tournament were the Mayagüez got to play. They were the runner-up team in Puerto Rico. Santurce got to play. A team from Venezuela, the Caracas Lions, played, and the Marlboro Smokers. That's a great name, right? Sponsored by the Marlboro Cigarette Company. But anyway, the Bob Gibson, mentioned 3 times already, gave up a home run to Ozzie on Valentine's Day, 1962, in the very final game ever played at that famous stadium. However, De La Hoz hit a walk-off homer, and Santurce, of course, won 8 games and won the tournament. The All-Star team, there was a catcher who became a famous hitting coach named Charlie Lau. He was a teammate of Ozzie's. And at the very bottom here, I mentioned that Ozzie, when he played for the '62 Baltimore Orioles, he did pinch hit for marvelous Marv Throneberry. Anyway, I thought I'd mention that because Throneberry is probably better known as a member of the New York Mets. Here's the Mayagüez Town Plaza, the town square. Beautiful, depiction there. I think Gary, the coordinator, mentioned the 3 Alou brothers in the next slide. The 3 Alou brothers were teammates of Ozzie with the Escogido Lions. Obviously, some of you may know this, but Gaylord Perry, who later threw a pretty good spitball, Gaylord pitched for the Lions of Escogido, and he later told a sports writer that winner in the Dominican helped get him noticed by the San Francisco Giants. Okay, going back to Mayagüez. Mayagüez played several championship series with Ozzie. Ozzie had a good year in '63-64. He was already in his early 30s. That was the year I was 9 years old. That was the first year I followed winter ball, and I can tell you that Tony Oliva won the batting title in Puerto Rico. Roberto Clemente came in third, and believe it or not, both Tony Oliva and Roberto Clemente were American League and National League batting champs in '64. So that winter in Puerto Rico, as a 9-year-old, as a kid, I became very knowledgeable about how important the Winter League was for Major League players. Not from reading an encyclopedia, but from watching some of these games on TV and in person. See, here's a picture of Roberto Clemente, the great legendary player, and Oliva, and they were friendly. I mean, the Puerto Rico Winter League was all about winning, but the players talked to each other and they got along. I was told Clemente would invite some of his teammates like Lee May and Don Buford to his home for meals. So I'm just saying it was a nice atmosphere. The next, Jose Cardenal, was from Cuba, and he led the Puerto Rico Winter League with home runs for the Caguas team in '63. Unfortunately, with the San Francisco Giants, they didn't play him very often, and they traded a lot of Latino players. I think I don't want to get into Alvin Dark because a lot has been written about Alvin Dark as a manager, but unfortunately, a lot of the Latino players ended up traded from the Giants to other teams. Okay, piggybacking on Ozzie Jr.'s very accurate comments, in '64-65, the Detroit Tigers officially signed an agreement with the Mayagüez Indios, an agreement that lasted a decade and a half. And as Ozzie Jr. pointed out, Mickey Stanley, Jim Northrup, Willie Horton, Denny McLain, you can name them. Basically, 80% of the 1968 world champion Detroit Tigers went through Mayagüez, and they all became friendly with Ozzie Sr. Denny McLain was one of the top pitchers in Puerto Rico. Oh, by the way, Jim Northrup told me that he made more money with Mayagüez. He made about $5,000 in 3 months. But back then, in 1965, the minimum MLB salary was like $6,000. Okay, and it was $10,000 thanks to Marvin Miller in '68. So when Jim Northrup played 2 winter seasons with Mayagüez, he made more money in 6 months with Mayagüez than he made in 6 months with the Detroit Tigers, easily by a lot.
Yeah, they were paying players to hit home runs and they did. I mean, like you were saying, money would come your way. They were paying the players money if they did something good in the game, and
Yes,
then and I mean, that was like
Normal.
normal.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah, and that's a grip. And even during the Satchel Pager, and Jorge Colon Delgado can back this up from his research, but during the 1940s and 50s, um, if a guy like Wilmer Fields from Iowa West hit a home run, they would pass the plate. And Wilmer told me after he hit a home run off Satchel Paige in 1948, he collected $125 after the game. That was a lot of money back in
yeah,
1948. And Northrop for the Jimmy Northrop told me in our phone conversation that when Mayagüez won the league championship over the Ponce Lions, the ownership of that team gave them a nice going away bonus for getting some clutch hits. Yeah, some playoff bonus money under the here, take $300 home with you. You
yeah.
know, Sparky Anderson, by the way, who was Ozzie's teammate in 56, 57. Sparky liked Ozzie Sr. so much that they talked a lot because Ozzie became a player coach for him. And Ozzie was one of the guys that told Sparky, I think you, Sparky, will benefit from managing winter ball because eventually you're going to have a lot of Latinos in the big leagues. And I think it'll behoove you someday, before you become a big league manager, I think it will help your resume to manage winter ball. So guess what? Sparky is hired by the Magallanes team. However, However, the team went on a losing streak, and again, Magallanes fired him. But Sparky told me to my face that it was not a bad experience because he managed in a very competitive league, and that experience of managing in front of all those rabid fans came in handy as he got a little bit older. So he did not regret that at all.
Rabbit fans, good one.
Okay, in 65, 66, this was the year that Northrop told me this was the highlight of Northrop's career before the 68 World Series. Ozzie helped Mayagüez win their second title of the decade. And Ozzie, there were a couple of games that winter season that he hit two homers against Ponce just before Christmas, then against Caguas. And by the way, Ferguson Jenkins was pitching for Caguas. Maybe not that day, but Ozzie faced a couple of Hall of Famers. He batted against Steve Carlton from Ponce that winter, and he also batted against Fergie Jenkins. So he told me that it was still very competitive in that winter ball. And Ozzie, by the way, was a pretty good fielder. He played every position basically. Very valuable player. In Puerto Rico, by the way, they have an all-star game that's played. They call it Three Kings Day. It's the day of the Three Kings, and the proceeds of that game help the underprivileged kids. So Ozzie and a catcher. I don't know if you've heard of Hector Valle, but Hector
Yeah.
Valle was the very first catcher from Puerto Rico to play in the National League. Actually, he caught Sandy Koufax in a game back in the 65 Major League season, which was the highlight of Hector's career, he told me. And the American players on the All-Star team were all Detroit Tigers. Remember, lefty name from Canada, John Hiller, a weak hitting shortstop, Ray Euler, Northrop, and Mickey Stanley represented Mayagüez on that team. And that year, the Latinos beat the Americans 3-2 in the All-Star game. Anyway, and in the championship, here's a picture of the 66 Mayagüez Indios. It's kind of in small print, but Ozzie is kind of at the top left-hand side. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, Jimmy Northrop is below him. I think Northrop is below him. The manager is a great guy named Wayne Blackburn, who I really enjoyed talking to. Blackburn managed basically in the minor leagues for a long time, and he also managed a team from Panama to a Caribbean Series championship back in 1950. So he was a very sharp guy for managing winter ball. Very, very savvy manager.
You want to hear something? You want to hear something
Yeah.
about him that I used
Yes.
to remember that he used to
Yeah.
say when the game was on the line or we needed an out or something, he would always yell, "Pop it up, pop it up, pop it up." That's all I remember him. Pop it up, pop it up. He'd be in the dugout saying that. Crazy.
Wow.
I remember him.
Isn't that something? Wow. So Blackbird comes back in Puerto Rico. If you were a winning manager, they resigned you. Of course, if you started losing, they would fire you. So he was rehired again. Tony Paris, who made Puerto Rico his home after leaving Cuba at a young age, was the MVP that year. Orlando played for Santurce. Paul Blair played for Santurce. But a young man, Jimmy Rosario, who became a backup to Willie Mays with the 71 Giants. Jimmy played for the Arecibo Lobos and led the league in stolen bases. The following season, I think it was mentioned, Ozzie Sr. got his first full-time Winter League managing job with the Mayagüez Indios. Unfortunately, he didn't have a lot to work with, and the other teams were loaded because they were paying higher salaries, etc. As was mentioned, Roberto Clemente did, I think, homer off Ozzie, and Roberto Clemente was an all-star. Clemente batted .382 that winter, but didn't have enough appearances to win the batting title. But Johnny Bench mentioned several times how helpful San Juan was for him as a 19-year-old kid, and just a strong winter league. 68-69, Ozzie came back to coach. He was basically a coach and a player. Wayne Blackburn was rehired to manage. How many of you have heard about that great, smart Mike Marshall, who later wrote some scientific books about pitching? He perfected the screwball and was like the Cy Young winner with the 74 Dodgers. Mike Marshall actually was a starter for the Detroit Tigers. Sent Mike Marshall to Mayagüez, hoping that he might maybe someday become a starter for them. So Mike Marshall was another Tiger who pitched for Mayagüez. Believe it or not, Ozzie Virgil faced Jim Palmer on December 22nd, 1968. Mayagüez was short on pitchers for that doubleheader, and Palmer pitched a no-hitter, a 7-inning no-hitter. His catcher was Elrod Hendricks. Ozzie, started the game. The game lasted an hour and 25 minutes. And by the way, Sparky managed San Juan that year. So Sparky reconnected with Ozzie that winter in Puerto Rico. Ozzie became a coach again for the 69-70 Indios, managed by Cal Irmer, who was a very nice person, good manager, good person. Mayagüez came back to have a good season. Jimmy Fregosi, at age 28, managed Ponce. And Fregosi later told me that winter managing Ponce showed him that he had a career, he had a future managing it, because he had never managed before. Yeah. Daryl Patterson told me that Ruben Gomez, would throw it. Ruben Gomez was known for throwing at people, and that's another. We don't have time to talk about that, but Ruben Gomez was a great competitor. Here's another picture of the stadium in Mayagüez with the little insignia on the field. I know it's almost 8 o'clock New York time, but we got off the late. Gary, can we go a little bit longer?
Yeah, you go ahead, keep going.
Okay, because I know we've got. Okay,
you're gonna have a lot of questions, you and Ozzie's siblings. So
yes. Oh, by the way, according Jorge Colom Delgado makes an excellent point. Ozzie's father, Henry Virgil, was actually from Puerto Rico. His mom's last name was Pichardo, so his full name was Osvaldo Virgil Pichardo. So I think Jorge made a great point, because the reason why Ozzie played in Puerto Rico as a native was because of his Puerto Rico connection. That's a very important point. And of course, I believe Ozzie Jr. can correct me, but you played in the Winter League in Puerto Rico, and you played as a native, correct?
Yes, I played as a native, and I played with Santurce and Caguas, and Caguas first, then in Mayagüez too. So yeah.
Yes, you played. Yes, and you played. I think the early '80s when players like Ricky Henderson, Cal Ripken.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that was a good. We won it. We won it in what, 1980, I think, or 79.
81, I think you were.
Yeah, 81. Yeah, we ended up winning that, and that was the league was unbelievable. The players we had Chale Cruz, we had Cal Ripken, Tony Bernasar, Eddie Murray, Gary Grace, Tony Scott. We had a great team.
I think Ray Miller was your manager that year.
Yes, Ray Miller was the manager.
Yeah, and I interviewed a guy. There was a pitcher who won 20 games for the Orioles named Mike Boddicker. He joined the team, and he helped your team.
He was on our team. He was on our team. We actually had the whole pitching staff that won in '83 on our team. On our team.
And real quickly, one of my regrets as living in Puerto Rico as a 26-year-old at that time, because of some labor issues in the country of Venezuela, the 1981 Caribbean Series was canceled. But had Caguas gone to that Caribbean Series with Cal Ripken Jr., yourself, and others, that would have been a very interesting series, because Escogido had a very good team that year with Pedro Guerrero, who had just who was about to win a World Series ring. That would have been a fantastic Caribbean series.
Yeah.
Would have been okay. So where are we? Okay, now we're transitioning. Can we move it up a second? Move it up one, please. Yeah, there you go. Okay, right there. 71. So now we're in the Dominican Republic. Ozzie Virgil Sr., because of his good managing and coaching experience, and fully bilingual, very highly respected, managed in the Dominican, and he managed the Águilas Ibaeñas. Actually, in 71, believe it or not, he managed Tony La Russa. So not only is he connected to Tommy Lasorda, Hall of Fame manager, he's connected to Sparky Anderson, Hall of Fame manager. He manages Tony La Russa, Hall of Fame manager. He manages Gene Tennis, MVP of the 72 World Series. And Tennis told me that winter ball was very important to him. Tennis was considered a little bit of a journeyman player, and he needed the money. And he told me that Ozzie Virgil gave him some confidence, because Virgil also had done some catching. So not only was Ozzie Virgil a fine human being, Ozzie Virgil was very sharp. And if he could take a player and said, hey, listen, if you do this, it might help your game. So Tennis told me that he was very appreciative of Ozzie. I want you to hear this, because this goes beyond his statistics, okay? He was just a very smart man and a very good baseball man. In 71-72, he took a team to the Caribbean Series after Licey was heavily favored, because if you look at the chart here, the Licey Tigers had an outfielder named Mickey Rivers, who won 2 rings with the Yankees, Kirk Bevacqua, who was a very good winter league player.
He likes to fight.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you played with him.
I played
played
against
with
him. He likes
Yeah.
to fight, Kurt Vivacqua. He
Yeah.
hits everybody in the fights.
Yeah.
He hits his own teammates. Go look at the 74
Padres.
Atlanta and Padres game. He hit everybody.
Yes, very good. And also, those of you, I don't know if any of you like the Cincinnati Reds, but Sergio Geronimo was a great winter league player, and he was terrific too. So this was considered an upset. However, Ozzie managed a very good relief pitcher who started and relieved, named Gene Garber. The Gene Kleins was a pretty good reserve outfielder with the Pirates. Adrian Garrett, Charlie Sands were home run hitters. But in the very first Caribbean series that Ozzie managed in was first week of February of 1972, and he had the privilege of managing, in my opinion, the best Dominican outfielder of that generation, who was Cesar Cedeno, who was, if it hadn't been for injuries, some personal issues, we don't know how far he could have gone. But in 72, the All-Star team for that Caribbean series included Rod Carew, who actually was a player manager for the team from Aragua, Venezuela, the Aragua Tigers. You also had David Concepcion, who many think should be in the Hall of Fame. Can you imagine a double play combination of Carew and Concepcion finishing 3-3? I mean, it was a good team, but the Ponce team finished 5-1. Ozzie's team was 3-3. And here's a picture of the great Cesar Cedeno. His nickname was Super Baby, and he had he not played in the Astrodome, there's no telling how many home runs he would have hit in the 1970s. Leo DeRocher managed him, by the way, and DeRocher once said that the only outfielder that was ever better than Cedeno that he managed was a guy named Willie Mays. And Cedeno was, as a young Cedeno was not too far off from Willie Mays when they both were young. These were the Caracas Lions, the team from the capital city that Ozzie again managed to a Caribbean series in 1973. One of my interviewees was Diego Segui, who was from Cuba. Diego Segui loved Ozzie Sr. Caracas, unfortunately, Tommy Lasorda's team, the Licey Tigers, came in first. Caracas and Santurce tied for second. Mexico finished last. But Ozzie did get to manage against Frank Robinson, Hall of Fame outfielder, and Tommy Lasorda. On the All-Star team, Licey was the Dodgers farm club because you had Steve Yeager, Steve Garvey, Manny Mota. You had Bobby Valentine. Enjoyed that series very much. He told me he was the MVP. Caracas did beat Licey in one of the games. Here's the lineup that Ozzie managed, by the way. Campaneris, 3-time World Series champion, leading off at shortstop. Cesar Tovar, Davalillo, Joe Ferguson, catcher, Bobby Darwin, a great minor league and winter league hitter, Gus Gill, Gonzalo Marquez was a very good hitter. Manny Trillo was a good player. Reggie Cleveland was a decent major league pitcher with the Cardinals. Lasorda, etc. Gave me a good quote. Here's a very nice picture. Those of you New York Giant fans obviously know more than I do about Willie Mays, but of course, in 1973, this was Willie's last All-Star game appearance, flanked by Pete Rose, batting champion that year with the Reds, and the very talented Cedeno. So as I said earlier, DeRocher was highly complimentary of a young Cedeno. So was Roberto Clemente, thought that Cedeno was going to eclipse a lot of the players. Fast forward to 1975, first week, the Caribbean Series was played at Bithorn Stadium. The Puerto Rico team basically was an all-star team between Caguas and Bayamon. Willie Montañez, Eliseo Rodriguez, Felix Millán were some of the players. Jerry Morales, Ken Griffey Sr. made the all-star team. Tom Hilgendorf. But Phil Garner told me, in my interview with him, he told me that he had played for Ponce the year before that. And he told me that winner in Venezuela with Ozzie managing him basically was the launching pad for his 1975 breakout season with the Oakland A's, who were, three-time world champions. I want to thank Miguel Dupuy Gomez, who he's a historian of the Venezuelan Winter League, and he's a huge fan of the Aragua Tigers. And Miguel is also responsible for several of the photos that will be appearing now. In 78, 79, Ozzie Sr. managed the Aragua Tigers again. And another very good team. Okay.
I see my
I'd
little
like to hold
brother
it.
in there.
Yeah.
My little brother's in there. I don't know how he snuck in there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Him down there.
Okay, very good. Well, and now we're going to go to the La Guaira. Those of you who like to go fishing will enjoy hearing about the sharks, the tiburones. The tiburones of La Guaira, they were champions of the 2024 Caribbean Series, which I attended in Miami, Florida. Ozzie, believe it or not, Ozzie mostly wore number 17, but that particular winter, he wore number 21, which of course was worn by the great Roberto Clemente. But I'd like you to see a picture of Darryl Strawberry. Darryl Strawberry became a tremendous rookie with the 83 Mets, but Ozzie Virgil Sr. was a terrific influence. And I believe somebody can confirm this later on, but Ozzie Virgil Sr. was given some credit for mentoring a young Strawberry who was like 20 years old. And Strawberry hit 12 home runs, leading the Venezuelan Winter League that year. Well, for about 12 years, from 2009 to 2021, the New York Mets employed Ozzie in Boca Chica, Dominican Republic, as a baseball academy instructor. So, and it wasn't just Darryl Strawberry. I've mentioned Gene Tennis. I mean, I could spend another 30 minutes mentioning from A to Z the players that Ozzie Virgil mentored. Let's fast forward to 1983, please. Hold it. Yeah, 1983. One of my favorite Puerto Rico teams. They were called the Cinderella team. Arecibo had never won a Puerto Rico. They were an expansion team in the early 60s, but they were 5-1 in the Caribbean Series. And Dickie Thon, who's a friend of mine, reinforced them. Howard Johnson played for the Dominican team. Anyway, but Ozzie did not manage the Dominican team. He managed, the team in Venezuela. But anyway, it was a great series for them. And I'd like to real quickly highlight Ozzie's stats in the Dominican Republic. Seven seasons, 220 games. He batted 256. He was a batting champion, I told you. He did pretty well in the playoffs. He was very consistent, batted 265, good clutch hitter. He was also traded. In the Dominican, they played to win, and he was traded to the Águilas Ibaeñas for several unknown players. He was, as a manager, he was 53-65, but he did win. He did win the pennant in 71-72. In 1996-97, he managed David Big Papi Ortiz. And by the way, David Big Papi Ortiz a few years ago called Ozzie Sr. an icon. That's pretty nice praise for considering that Big Papi's in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, right? Those of you who follow the Giants understand or know that he coached with the Giants in the late 60s, early to mid 70s, but he was also not only was he a friend of Lasorda's and Sparky's and Tony La Russa, he became very friendly with Dick Williams. Dick Williams apparently retained Ozzie Sr. when Dick Williams took over the Montreal managing jobs in 1977. And actually, when Dick Williams went over to coach to manage the Padres to the 1984 World Series, Ozzie Sr. was one of his coaches. So Dick Williams took Ozzie to San Diego. And if I'm not mistaken, Ozzie Jr. was a National League All-Star in 1985. And I think he was one of the few in All-Star history who was actually coached by his dad, correct?
Yes.
Is that correct? And didn't
Yeah,
and
well,
you
I wasn't the MVP, but I did it. I did,
You played.
I did some damage, and I should have gotten it.
yeah, you drove in a couple
I
runs.
should have gotten it. I
Yes.
should have gotten it. They,
Yeah, right.
Lamar Hoyt got it, and I knocked in a run in 75,
Yes.
and the go-ahead run, but he pitched what, 2 innings, and then they gave it to him. Then the next time we played 13 innings, and I ended up getting on base and scoring a winning run. But yeah, I should have gotten, but I got in the All-Star game home run contest, and Andre Dawson, we only got to hit like very little. We didn't do what they're doing today. I would die. I mean, I think we won it with 3 home runs in the National League against the American League. One thing I got to get in it because Mike Schmidt doesn't like to do those things, and Mike Schmidt can't hit home runs in batting practice.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's interesting. Oh,
yeah,
by the way, Mike Schmidt, by the way, played for Caguas in the 1974 Caribbean Series and
yeah,
also found Puerto Rico extremely helpful. Okay, in
yeah.
1984, when Ozzie coached under the very legendary manager Dick Williams, Ozzie got the chance to talk to Sparky again before some of the games, and I would imagine we didn't talk about this in detail, but I know that I really feel that Sparky and Ozzie were fairly close. That's my understanding, and of course,
Yeah.
We talked about the All-Star game. The senior Ozzie also had an opportunity to coach in the short-lived senior league in the St. Petersburg Pelicans. He also managed the 1996 Bellingham Washington Giants. Here's some of his accolades. The Escogido Lions officially retired his number 17. That's a big honor in the Dominican League. He's inducted into the Dominican Sports Hall of Fame the same year that San Diego won the National League pennant. The 06-07 Dominican winter season dedicated and tremendous honor that season, having the airport in Montecristi named in his honor. Inducted into the Latino Baseball Hall of Fame, followed by the Rochester Red Wings Hall of Fame. Some of his major league stats here: 13 years in the minor leagues. That's a long career. Playing, going on bus trips and whatever else he had to endure, during that period of time. Also, the Mets had a well-known Spanish broadcaster named Juan Jose Alicea, who was inducted with Ozzie Sr. into the Mets Latin American Hall of Fame. Oh, literally 2 years ago, November 8th, in a ceremony in Boca Chica, Dominican Republic. One of the nicest tributes, I believe, and I say this for the end, paid to Ozzie Sr., was by the shortstop manager, Ozzie Guillen, who basically came into some of his formative years were under Ozzie and with the La Guaira Sharks team. And just to quote Ozzie Guillen, Viejo is very, is a very friendly. It doesn't just mean old. It means, it's a form of respect. So he thanks Ozzie Sr. Rest in peace, Ozzie Sr. You're one of the most important people in my baseball career. Thanks to you, I accomplished a lot in pro baseball. And by the way, Ozzie is only the second manager to win a World Series with the 2005 White Sox and the 2024 team from La Guaira. Lasorda won a Caribbean Series with Licey, followed by two World Series with the Dodgers in the early and late 80s. And I'm not here to promote my 3 baseball books, but these are just the covers of 3 history books that I wrote in the past, I guess, 3 decades. The Puerto Rico Winter League with Roy Campanella on the cover, and the Santurce Crabbers team showing the Murderers Row, the 5 legendary sluggers, Clemente, Mays, Buster Clarkson, Bob Thurman, and George Crow. And lastly, the the book that was published about 8 months ago, the Caribbean series, which chronicles this tournament, which actually goes back to 1949 when before Monty Irvin became a New York Giants star. Monty Irvin played for the Almendares team that won the first series with an outfield of Sam Jethro and Al Gianfrido, and a first baseman who later became rifleman, Chuck Connors. Chuck Connors was a baseball prospect before he became a Hollywood actor. I'll be glad to take questions if they're. I know it's 8:15.
Tom, I got to tell you, I don't think it could be any more comprehensive than that.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I'm going to ask you a question. I also want to ask the Thompson Virgil. You know, I don't know if you know the answer to this. I'm sure it's Americanized. But, you know, I've seen many pictures of Ozzie Virgil Sr., and his name is spelled differently. It's Ozzie or Ossie. Why is that?
Well, I mean,
Go
I think
ahead.
Osvaldo, go ahead. Let the son answer it.
No, I mean, you know, I got a bunch of cards of SOSS.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then some of them are OZZ, but I think they call them in Dominicans that they call Ossi.
Ossi. Yeah.
Yeah, Ossi.
Yeah. And I think it's because it's Osvaldo is with an S.
Yeah.
They
Right.
started it that way. I'm not really sure because he's so much older than me that he might remember.
No, but mainly that, you know.
They changed it somewhere,
They
you know,
said
I'm
they
going to
did it
say,
before.
yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, once they changed it to the OZ, they stuck with the OZ.
Go ahead and tell them what you think.
Yeah. What is your thoughts?
Well, you know, let me backtrack to Ozzie Guillen, because in Venezuela, I think they call him Oswaldo with a W,
Yeah.
and that's interesting. But when I grew up in Puerto Rico, the fans call him Osvaldo with a V.
Osvaldo.
With a V.
Or with
And
a
in
B.
Puerto Rico, you know, if you're familiar with the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico, Cuba, even the Dominican Republic to some extent, they speak so fast, and it affected me when I was young. You speak so fast that sometimes you cut the S's.
Right.
You know, you compress the words. So
Yes.
that also has an effect on that. To some degree.
they'll say Osvaldo. Osvaldo,
Yes.
not
Osvaldo.
Osvaldo.
Yeah.
Obado.
Exactly.
Obado.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Tom, I got to tell you, you really are the authoritarian here. What you showed and explained, I mean, unreal. Now, I got to ask the children who are not children, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Ozzie, did you ever like rib your father that maybe you had a better career? Was there like the father son, hey, I was better than you, or any of that stuff going on in the family?
You really want me to answer that?
Yeah, I do.
Well, I'm going to tell you his answer. All right. I was in high school, and then when I got drafted, I told him, hey, I'm going to be better than you. You know what his answer was? If you're better than me, you're going to be in the big leagues.
That's great.
The other thing that he did for me, I wanted to play shortstop. He goes, "You're too big to play shortstop. You're going to be a catcher." And he got me into the position to where I was catching and stuff, and I learned a trade. And
Right.
I want to thank the Phillies. They really taught us a lot about. I had some good catchers there, coaches. And back then in the 80s, they were like really, they had most of the instructors were like 3-1, you know, per player. I mean, in FIL and all that stuff. But my dad, that's what I told him, and then that's what he answered back to me. So
That's great. You know, a few years back, I don't even remember when, I was contacted by the gentlemen who are making the Willie Mays documentary.
yeah.
And I got a hold of your father's phone number. I don't know how.
Yeah.
And then I got a bill from the phone company for like $18. I was like, what the heck is going on here? Anyway, I got in touch with your sister.
Yeah.
And I think it's just wonderful that your father is in that documentary where he will always be seen. Linda, how do you feel about that?
It's amazing. I actually was talking to a friend today about how we even connected. And I remember I got a letter from someone, I'm sure I have it filed somewhere. And they sent me, I thought it was this person said they were part of your organization. And they gave me your phone number or your email. Actually, I think that's what. And then I emailed you and said, I'm Ozzie's daughter. And then obviously we got that connection and we, talked about you gave me the connection to the people from HBO and it's just amazing. I wish that I could see some of the stuff that wasn't published, part of their conversation. That would be awesome. I do have his phone number, so maybe I'll reach out.
He looked
But,
great. He
yeah.
looked great on
Yeah.
that film in the film. He did.
Absolutely. It was amazing. It was really amazing.
Wonderful. All right, I gotta let Mars, you're up.
Of course.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. That was pretty interesting. You mentioned Sparky Anderson. Well, I had a cup of coffee with the Rock Hill Cardinals and he was the manager. I hardly ever got to play and I was dropped pretty quickly. But my main question is, we talk about baseball here, and has it ever really been disclosed what owner's net income is after all of the expenditures? And that would be directed to our host as well as the Virgil clan.
What's the question?
The question is, has it ever been disclosed what owner's net income in today's game, what net income is after all the expenditures to owners?
Mars, we're talking
60-40.
about Ozzie Virgil. I mean, I don't know.
60-40. It's 60-40. 60 to players and 40 to the owners. That's
40
what-
to the owners. Okay.
Yeah, 40
So
to
there's
the
no-
owners. And I think the All-Star game goes to our pension. Anything in the World Series and playoffs and stuff goes to all the players. So not all of it. I don't think all of it, but most of it. But I think that's what it is. It's 60-40, and that's the way it's been forever. I mean, that it was even worse before. I mean, the players didn't get that much, but now, since they have the negotiations and everything, they put it out there like that. So
And Ozzie, could you reiterate what teams you played for in the major leagues?
I started off with the Phillies. I got drafted in 76. I spent some time in the minors, and I was in 1980. I was a call up in 1980, and you know what they paid us back then?
$6
First
grand?
year in the big league? No, $35,000 what we made in the big leagues.
What
my
year was
sec-
that?
1980.
Uh-huh.
And then 81, I made 55,000. 82, I made 75,000. Just to give you an idea where the money was back then, what the players were getting paid. They weren't paying that much. The minor leagues, 1,500, double A, 2,500. And then AAA, I actually got a big league contract for the AAA, so they pay me 35 in AAA, and then they call me up. But they were giving signing bonuses back then. So they'll sign somebody and they'll say, well, we'll give you this much money if you make A ball, double A, triple A, and then they give you the bonuses, I say that's how they ended up doing it. They didn't give you all your money back then. So if you sign, I think I signed for 18,000, then they gave me bonuses, and so I made almost 30.
Well, you were lucky because in 1965, I got $125 and 2 meals.
I think Dad got $150.
Thank you.
Hey, Ozzie, the Giants are looking for a right-handed catcher to platoon
Oh.
with Bailey, so maybe you should think about it, all right? Come back.
Maybe, yeah, I like to do it like one day, one game a week for me now.
Russ, you're up, Russ. Russ, you're muted, Russ.
I remember as a kid, I was maybe 9, 10, watching the Caribbean World Series or playoff games on television. I don't know what network was on, but I remember watching guys like Pancho Herrera, Tony Gonzalez, Tony Curry that played for the Phillies. I was wondering if anybody else in the audience remembered watching those at all, but it was something that was very unique. And then lastly, just a quick comment. I like seeing the Orlando Cepeda 1962 playing right field for whatever team he was on. I guess the Giants were trying to get him to play a little bit more outfield and get more comfortable out there because they could have used him. But those are my comments. It was a fabulous, fabulous show. It was like walking through my baseball cards all over again.
Thank you.
Nice.
Mr. Romo, you're up.
Yeah, all right, thanks. Tom, that was a fantastic history of, especially with the Winter League stuff. And Ozzie, this could be directed to you too. Maybe you guys have an answer, maybe you don't. It wasn't that long ago where a lot of clubs are sending their players to Winter League, to hone their craft, to be better players out there for the big leagues. Why aren't we seeing that too often? Is it because of money? It's a little weird. You would think that these players would want to go out there and hey, you know what? I want to be better. So when I come up to the big leagues, I'm better prepared to meet that challenge.
I think they're not doing that anymore. A lot of guys like Cal Ripken was there playing third base actually for us. And he went down there. Eddie Murray was playing first, but they were getting more at bats. And plus, the league was with, you're playing with big league players. You get to get you get all these big league players that you're playing against. You're like going, wow. In your head, you're going, I can play here. Because you're playing some big league players over there. So, most of the guys are going down there and master their craft. And you can, do different things that you're trying to do to make yourself better. But mainly playing year round, spring training comes along, man. We're like 2 weeks away from go day. We're ready to go. That's why you see a lot of those Latin players shining in spring training and making clubs and stuff because they play in the winter ball. And the more at bats you get, the better you are, believe it or not, especially up against the type of pitching that you're facing. Now it's not the same. I think when I went back there now and saw some of the games, I'm watching a lot of A-ball, double-A players. It's not the same. It's not the same type of, we had a big league club in Cowboys that one year. It was a big league club. I mean, they were guys from AAA and stuff. Most of everybody was AAA, but all those guys made it. It was amazing. I mean, it was a good team.
Tom,
by the way,
comment, Tom.
To add, Eduardo Figueroa was on that team too.
Yeah.
And another quick comment: you also have the advent of the Arizona Fall Leagues. I think more major league clubs are a little bit reluctant to send their players to some island when they can control them in Arizona.
Right.
You have the agents, and then you have contract restrictions, and even some of the Latino players are said, well, we're not going to allow you to play, like it happened with Jose Altuve and the shortstop. And Altuve was playing for Magallanes, and the shortstop for the Texas Rangers, like his name's were double play partners, and the teams wouldn't allow them to play in the Caribbean Series, and that's kind of sad, but that's the reality. And then you also have like Australia and Hawaii, but I think the Arizona Fall League, as Jorge Colon Delgado pointed out recently, that's one of the culprits of that too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. Does anybody here who does not know how to use the yellow hand have a question? I saw some comments. Howard, go ahead. And
Yeah, I
then
know how to
Miguel.
use it, but it's not working.
Howard, and then Miguel. Howard, go
Okay,
ahead.
I have a large collection of New York and San Francisco Giant cards. I believe you might help me on this. This might be Ozzie's last major league card. It's from the 1967 Topps, and this was his last season with the Giants, I believe, or 66 was the last one. The other one I pointed out earlier. Three things about this card. Ozzie is spelled with the S's.
Ozzie.
It's the only card of the New York Giants that has the whole of the San Francisco Giants, 58, that has San Francisco spelled out. All the other Giant cards just says San Fran Giants. So I don't know why that has the San Francisco. And last but not least, I noticed, and you can't read it here really, but his birthday is incorrect. They have it down as May 7th, 1933. And then tonight I learned that it was May 17th, 1933. I never really thought about it.
1932.
32, yeah.
32?
Even though it says
well, this says May 7th, 33. So
okay,
and a couple of things. But this card's not in great shape. It's probably not worth a hell of a lot, but I'm really proud to have it.
Howard, is that card? Does he have a San Francisco Giant hat on that we know today, or is it different?
No, it's the one that looks like a dollar sign.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not the current hat
Right.
they were wearing already, the regular SF hat, but not for the baseball cards, which I guess
Thank you, Howard.
last season. Okay,
Miguel,
pleasure.
you're up.
Yes, thank you. I met Ozzie Virgil Senior and Junior when I was a child at 7 years ago, 7 years old. I want to share with yours and memorabilia from the Tigres de Aragua team, baseball team, champion, with the signature of all team. I mentioned the players. Enos Cabell. He invited us, my family and I, to saw the baseball practice before the game. Jim Todd, the pitcher. Tim Hosley, the catcher. Phil Gardner, second base and manager and champion with the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1979. Robert Flynn, Mike Pasick, Adrian Garrett, Lyman Bostock, Joel Youngblood, Don Hood, Mill Wilcox, Dwan Caper, and Ozzie Virgil Sr.
Lyman Bostock.
Yeah.
I think that was a year afterwards.
That was the year probably after he
I don't know.
was killed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in 1977, 1978, Ozzie Virgil Jr. signed here.
Yeah.
Yep. That's me.
With the players Don Werner, Steve Patchin, the pitcher Mike Nagy, Mike Loom, great batter, the Cuban pitcher Gustavo Quiroz, a good pitcher Preston Hanna, Dale Soderholm, and Carlos Patato Pascual.
And Dick Davalillo.
Dave Concepcion.
Dick Davalillo was in there too.
Yes, Big Davalillo.
Dick Davalillo, when I was there, I when after I signed, Dad took me to Venezuela so I can hit and get ready and, watch games, and they put me on the team. I was an import. Anyway, I didn't get to play. He said, "You can't play." I was like 19 years old. He said, "You ain't playing in this league." But I watched Dick Davalillo. He's my hero, man. I don't know. This guy.
That guy can get out of bed and hit.
Yeah, get out of bed, be hungover and drunk, and get 4 hits. I've seen it.
He was a great pinch hitter, I remember growing up with the Cardinals.
And
I think you're freezing a little.
Out of being drunk that night. I never seen anything like it. He was like talking like, I think he was up at the plate and he had a few drinks. It's like I couldn't believe it, but he can hit drunk. I know that for a fact. I was watching that. So,
Anybody else have a question before I wrap it up? I just want to say, first of all, to the Virgil family, I got one for each of you. Ozzie, how proud are you that your dad was the first Dominican? It's got to be like an amazing feeling to.
It is. I think the honor that they've given them and the respect and everything. To tell you the truth, my dad's helped a lot of people in baseball. You wouldn't believe how many people come up to me and says, "Hey, your dad's helped me greatly in my career." He had Strawberry during that time too, but I've watched him manage a lot of games, and he's got to be one of the smartest managers that never managed in the big leagues.
That's great.
The other one, Ozzie said when Ozzie played with them, I mean, a lot of the characteristic managing and stuff, Ozzie got from my dad.
Yeah. I
He
saw
got from my dad.
Linda when
If you asked Ozzie where he got because Ozzie's very smart, baseball smart. My dad was probably one of the smartest baseball guys on the field. That's why Dick Williams had him on the side. That's why he stayed around so long. Everybody knows that he knew what he was talking about. It's not like it is today.
Yeah.
It's not the same. I mean, he would caulk up some stuff, you know. I think he used to
when Tom showed the quotes by Ozzie Guillen, I saw Linda tear up a little bit. Linda, my last question for you is: we've discussed this, but maybe you want to share. So, without a doubt, your father wanted to be remembered as a giant, correct?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Dad wanted to be buried in that giant uniform, which you helped me get a hold of the organization or the person there to do that. And so we made sure that, you know, he wanted a New York Giant uniform, but as you know, that was a little hard to come by. So yeah, we put him in a Giants uniform.
He was dressed up in Giants.
Yep, he was dressed up in Giants for sure. That's how we left him in as a Giant. So yeah, I mean, you know, that was his since I can remember, since I was a child, you know, I remember my dad just always saying, you know, because, you know, as you get older and, you know, my dad would always talk about other people who had passed, you know, whatnot. And, yeah, he's just always said.
Have you ever been acquainted with Tom, our guest speaker, before tonight?
No, not at all, actually.
That's great.
No.
What a tribute.
And I'm looking forward to looking into some of the books, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I do like reading and hearing about players that, you know, played with our dad, against and with him. And so this was great. This gave us, you know, it gave me pretty much a reel of my father's career. Yeah.
That's
you know,
great.
and his legacy. So
very informative.
absolutely.
I mean, I was like, you know what? I'm looking at a lot of stuff he was saying, and it's just like it's going back into my head because when I was a kid, I'm looking at all this stuff, and I'm like going, "Holy crap! I know all these people,
Yeah,
all of them."
That's
and
great.
you know, being around the game and he took me to the game. He took me to the ballpark all the time when I was a kid. I mean, in Puerto Rico, I went to games. I was on the bus. There was one time he was managing, and in Puerto Rico, he flies a plane. One of the Dodgers guys, I think it was what the hell was his name? Heller. And him and my dad, they take off in an airplane and go to the game in Arecibo, which is a short trip. And the airplane gets stuck there. And so I took the bus there and I was watching them fly by and stuff, you know. I take the bus there and then the plane, the battery in it was bad. So he had to prop start it. He had me in the back of the controls holding the brakes. I was like scared. Then we flew back and there was little tropical storms and we went around, we were in the water and then we tried to land in Maya West and he almost flew into the sugarcane fields. And I was like, Dad, it's over there, the runway, because they didn't have no lights. And that got me into flying too. But
that's
to
great.
fly.
Yeah.
He
So,
loved
Before we thank you and Tom,
Yeah.
Ozzie, last thing. The one pitcher you hated facing.
Sid Fernandez.
There's some
Sid
Met fans
Fernandez.
here, they're going to like that. So.
Yeah, fuck that guy. I'll say it. 0 for 19. I either struck out or fucking hit a line drive off that son of a bitch. Couldn't get a fucking hit off him. He threw uphill and funky. Fuck that guy.
Hey,
There
Tom,
you go.
let's give it all up for Tom,
Great,
and Ozzie.
Hey, great picture though, man. He was tough. I mean, he was tough. He gave us some problems. He had a horseshit curveball, but when he threw it, you just look at it like, are you kidding me?
Tom,
But
what are
his
you working
fastball
on
was something.
next?
I got to catch him in the All-Star game, and I go, oh, so that's what his shit's doing. Okay, it's
Now you
taking
know.
off. Yeah, but hell, man, Sid Fernandez, toughest guy. All the other guys, no. Yeah, he was tough.
Tom, what are you working on next, Tom?
Well, 10 weeks from tonight, on January the 15th of 2026, I'm gonna do Valmy Thomas, who former Santurce catcher who caught for the New York and San Francisco Giants and some other teams, and he was quite a character too.
Wonderful. And any
thank
of Tom's friends, just
Oh,
email me. We'll get you on the list, and maybe Tom, you and Ozzie and Linda could get together through email. I'll be happy to exchange.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
we're available, no
Yeah,
problem.
just let
I
us
mean,
know.
we're not prima donnas over here, you know.
Good.
It's fine.
We
Thank you
will
so much.
we will reconvene in 2 weeks on a Wednesday, November 19th, with Russ Stanley. Again, thank you guys so much.
Nos
Thank
vemos,
you.
Great
Miguel.
night, everybody. Be well.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Miguel, gracias por el cuento, brother.
Bueno, siempre un gran cariño, una gran admiración a una gran persona